Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening for some of you. Bonjour, bonjour à tous les participants. Hola, mucho gusto tenerles aquí. It's a warm welcome for this third session of the annual Land Degradation Neutrality webinar series, organized jointly by Drynet, IUCN, and BOSEND. My name is Aurélie Bresse. I will be your moderator for today. I'm a land and water officer at the Food and Agriculture Organization. Over the past 20 years, I've been working on tenure, sustainable land management, land degradation, neutrality, and this in several countries of Latin America, the Caribbean, and Africa, and Asia. But particularly, today's webinar is very dear to my heart. During 2 years, I have been a coordinator that was for a project that was helping civil society in 15 countries to use more the voluntary guideline on responsible governance of tenure. So this is going to be a really exciting sharing moment and discussion. Before we begin, a few housekeeping points. I have been reminded. First, the webinar is being recorded. There is interpretation in Spanish, French, and English provided. You have to click on the word icon. There was a display at the beginning of this webinar. Please keep your microphone muted during the presentation. It will avoid background noise. And you are all warmly encouraged. You have started and it's great. So please continue to introduce yourself in the webinar chat. And there is also the QA box to record your question. And I will ask also my colleagues, presenters, to progressively respond to them. And also we will be then addressing them at the end of the webinar. We all ask everyone to remain respectful and concise in your contribution so that many voices can be heard. So the series of webinar and this third edition takes place in the context of the project called Strengthening Civil Society Role in Achieving Land Degradation Neutrality, which is supported by the Global Environment Facility and implemented by Drynet, IUCN, and BOSEND. This annual webinar series to enhance the knowledge and capacities of civil society organizations on key topics linked to land degradation neutrality. Those participants who will be fully attending 3 webinars out of 4 will receive a certificate of participation. And for the next 60 minutes, we will be looking at the voluntary guidelines on responsible governance of tenure for land, fisheries, and forestry in the context of food security. This is the full name, a bit long. And the objective of today's webinar are understanding the VGGT, which is the nickname for the voluntary guideline, and their relevance to achieving inclusive land degradation neutrality, learn example on how to integrate, connect the VGGT into national and local sustainable land management and land restoration, conservation, and community livelihood initiative for sound and inclusive land governance, and to reflect on the challenge, innovation, and good practices for the integration of the VGGT into LDN. So first, I will have the pleasure to briefly introduce our first panelist, Nathalie Van Aren. Nathalie is dedicated to promoting sustainable, fair, and inclusive land use systems. She holds a degree on tropical land use from Wageningen University and has worked in both hands for the past 20 years, collaborating with environmental justice organizations to advocate for policy that support local communities and ecosystems. Our focus is on agroecology, women's land rights, and the recognition of locally led initiatives, particularly through our engagement with the CSO network, Drynet. As a CSO observer of the UNCCD Science Policy Interface and a member of the UNCCD CSO panel, she has helped to place land tenure and governance of tenure at the center of land degradation neutrality in the UNCCD agenda. So, Nathalie, the floor is yours, and you have about 10 minutes.
Thank you very much, Aurélie. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm not sure if my slides are already up. I hope so. I don't know. Are they up? Aurélie, can you see them? Because I can't see them. Yes, they're up. Great. Yeah, thank you very much. Let me first give you a short introduction to both ends. Very short one. Both ends started in 1986 as a project of Dutch environmental organizations. And these organizations were typically engaged with Dutch environmental issues like acid rain and glass recycling and nuclear energy. And these Dutch environmental organizations received a lot of requests from CSOs from the Global South, but they did not know what to do with those requests of information, requests of collaboration. And that is the reason that the Dutch NGOs started the project Both Ends to support those CSOs from the Global South. The project was a success, and in 1991, Both Ends became a stand-alone organization. I think, can you put on the next slide? Nowadays, oh, yeah. And the next slide, please. Nowadays, Both Ends works with more than 500 organizations on environmental justice. Our vision is that we envision an environmentally just world in which people and ecosystems thrive and all people can live a life of dignity. Our mission is that Both Ends strengthens, connects, advocates, and creates space for civil society actors globally to bring about an environmental just world. And in the coming 5 years, we work towards this vision along the 3 interlinked strategic objectives that you see in this very interesting river. So the global environmental justice movement is strong and connected. Environmentally just practices and processes are widely recognized and more common, and environmental justice is countered and harm is addressed and healed. Yeah, I had to do this because this is our new strategy. So this is the first time that I presented. Next slide, please. Let's see. I had some checking questions. I'm not sure if how the technical how this works, but I would like to know if you've ever heard of the name VGGTs or tenure guidelines of voluntary guidelines for the responsible governance of tenure of land, fisheries, and forest outside the announcement of this webinar. So you can choose yes or no. And the second question is, have you been involved or are you involved in a dialogue with your national government on land tenure rights? And then you can say yes or no. So maybe 1 minute to vote, I don't know. Can we see the outcome? Is that possible? Okay, that's nice. So 37% of the people here have heard of the VGTTs and 63 have not heard of the VGTTs or tenure guidelines. Very nice that you're here. I hope you will get some knowledge about this very nice international tool. Have you been involved or are you involved in a dialogue with the government on land tenure rights? 36% also say yes and 64% say no. Okay, super, nice, thank you. Can you put on the next slide? I first would like to talk a little bit about the global crisis of land in numbers. 60% of the land is the remaining global forest cover below the safe boundary.
C'est
Muy
ce
por
qui
debajo
reste.
del límite seguro del 75%.
Sorry, I hear maybe that's my, okay, yeah, that's well below the safe boundary of 75%. 15 million square kilometers is the area of degraded land, more than the size of Antarctica, and expanding by 1 million square kilometer annually. 20% of the Earth's land surface is covered by savannas and is now under threat from cropland expansion and ill-conceived afforestation. 46% is the global land area classified as dry lands, home of a third of humanity. 75% of Africa is dry land. 90% is the share of the recent deforestation directly caused by food production. 80% is the contribution of food production to global deforestation. 25% is the share of the global biodiversity found in the soil. 1 billion is the amount of people with insecure land rights, fearing loss of home or land. More than $500 billion is the amount of money for agricultural subsidies across 88 countries, of which 90% fueled inefficient, harmful agricultural practices. And the last figure is $200 billion per year is the amount of money for nature-based solutions, which is dwarfed by $7 trillion per year financing environmental harm. So I would like to go to the next slide and go into the history of the VGGTs. Next slide, please. So before 2009, the world was grappling with mounting challenges tied to land resources, population growth, evolving consuming patterns, and poor harvests placed immense pressure on available land. At the same time, the surging demand for biofuels coupled with urbanization, international investment, and financial speculation of land intensified competition for land. These pressures often led to conflicts and highlighted the need for a unified approach. It became increasingly clear that a common reference framework, one that promoted responsible governance of land, was urgently needed. Between 2009 and 2010, the FAO took an important step to address these challenges. The FAO initiated a comprehensive global consultation process designed to gather diverse perspectives and insights from stakeholders from all over the world. This included 10 regional consultations with governments, ensuring national priorities and policies were integrated into the framework. Recognizing the role of private sector in land governance, a dedicated consultation was also held for business and investors. And meanwhile, civil society organizations were actively engaged through 4 regional consultations in Malaysia, Brazil, Italy, and Mali. The outcomes of all these consultations was extraordinary. Over 1,000 participants from 133 countries contributed to the process and bringing a wealth of knowledge and experience to the table. So, next slide, please. So the collective input of all these people helped shape a shared vision for responsible land tenure governance. This collaborative approach ultimately laid the groundwork for the Voluntary Guidelines on the Responsible Governance of Tenure of Land, Fisheries and Forest in the context of national food security. It has a beautiful acronym, VGGTs. And the VGGT is a landmark framework that continues to guide global efforts towards equitable, transparent, and sustainable land management today. Next slide, please. So what is the purpose of these tenure guidelines? The guidelines promote responsible governance of tenure of land with respect to all forms of tenure. So public, private, communal, indigenous, customary, and informal land tenure arrangement. Their overarching goals are to achieve food security and support the progressive realization of the right to food. They are also intended to contribute to achieving sustainable livelihoods, social stability, housing security, rural development, environmental protection, and sustainable social and economic development. And the guidelines are meant to benefit all people in all countries, although there is an emphasis on poor, vulnerable, and marginalized people, such as women and indigenous people. Next slide, please. What is responsible land tenure governance according to the tenure guidelines? It ensures that access to land, fisheries, and forest is more equitable. It protects people from the arbitrary loss of their tenure rights, including through forced evictions. It helps ensure no one is subject to discrimination under laws, policies, and practices. It leads to more transparent and participatory decision-making over land. It helps ensure disputes are resolved before they degenerate into conflict, and it simplifies the administration of tenure, and it makes it more accessible and effective to all. Next slide, please. The power of the VGGT. The voluntary guidelines are a transformative force in global land governance. What makes them so powerful? First and foremost, they were developed through extensive collaboration with a wide range of stakeholders: governments, civil society, business, banks, investors, private sector, and local communities. This inclusive process has given the tenure guidelines broad support and legitimacy, making them not just a theoretical framework, but a practical and widely accepted tool for action. The tenure guidelines are also deeply rooted in the international human rights framework. They build on and complement existing standards such as the United Nations Declarations on the Rights of Indigenous People, UNDRIP, on the ILO Convention 169, the OECD Guidelines for Multinationals, and the IFC Performance Standards. By providing clear, actionable guidance, the tenure guidelines help translate these global commitments into responsible land governance practices on the ground. At the core of the tenure guidelines, they offer a flexible but robust framework for governments to develop policies, laws, and land use programs. They encourage the creation of multi-stakeholder platforms at local, national, and regional levels, ensuring that implementation is both inclusive and effective. By establishing a common language, the tenure guidelines foster dialogue and cooperation among diverse groups, from policymakers to local communities. One of the unique strengths of the VGGT, or the tenure guidelines, is their recognition that land governance is a step-by-step process. Instead of imposing rigid rules, they guide countries towards transformative change over time. Some critics argue that their voluntary nature limits their impact, but in reality, this flexibility has allowed the guidelines to be more progressive and ambitious than mandatory rules might have been, ensuring that they can adapt to different contexts and needs. And finally, the tenure guidelines play a crucial role in advancing the Sustainable Development Goals. They connect SDG 1.4, which aims to reduce poverty by improving access to land, with SDG 5A, which promotes gender equality and women's land rights, and SDG 15.3, focused on combating desertification and restoring degraded land by 2030. Yeah, next slide, please. The power of the UNCCD and the tenure guidelines is rooted in their shared commitment to sustainable land management, restoration, and equitable land governance. In 2017, the UNCCD Science Policy Interface formally recognized that sustainable land management, land degradation, and land restoration are deeply interlinked with land tenure rights. This connection is clearly outlined in the conceptual framework for land degradation neutrality, which emphasizes that good land governance is a fundamental condition for achieving land degradation neutrality. Governments worldwide increasingly agree that when people have legal or customary recognition of their land rights, they are far more likely to adopt practices that prevent degradation and promote restoration, such as agroforestry, soil conservation, and water management. Conversely, without secure tenure, short-term exploitation often dominates, leading to overgrazing, deforestation, and unsustainable farming practices. A landmark moment came at UNCCD COP14 in India, 2019, where a decision on land tenure was adopted, officially recognizing the tenure guidelines as a key international framework for promoting secure land tenure rights and responsible land governance. This decision underscored that the tenure guidelines are as a critical tool for achieving land degradation neutrality and ensuring that land tenure security is integrated into global efforts to combat desertification, restore degraded land, and improve sustainable land management.
Nathalie, we need to wrap up your presentation.
Yeah, I'm always done. Thank you. Thank you. To further strengthen this connection, FAO and UNCCD developed a technical guide in 2022 that integrates the tenure guidelines into the LDN initiatives. Next slide, please. There are some national, former slide, very short. There are some national government initiatives. There is a very good initiative in Vietnam where the government has are revising the land law to strengthen the rights of small farmers and communities. Also using the tenure guidelines in Mongolia, the tenure guidelines were translated into Mongolian, and they also link it with pasture policies. And in Senegal, there is a national multi-stakeholder platform established in 2014 that is talking about how to implement the tenure guidelines. Then there is a this slide, please. Yes, there are some civil society initiatives. There are CSOs coordinated through FIAN have developed a people's manual on the tenure guidelines, and CSOs all around the world are translating the tenure guidelines in local languages. And then there are some international initiatives. The FAO has developed a e-learning course for CSOs and governments. The International Land Coalition has led the VGGT plus 10-year initiative to assess the implementation of the tenure guidelines. Countries like France, Germany, and the Netherlands have international cooperation programs on land tenure security and the implementation of the tenure guidelines. And the Global Donor Group on Land has created an interactive map and database to monitor and share information on the implementation of the tenure guidelines. Next slide and next slide. Then there is some, because I know this next slide, because this presentation will be shared with you. I have also included some reading tips where you can find and learn more about all these very nice initiatives. Thank you, and sorry for taking a little bit more time.
No, thank you. Thank you very much for the deep dive, and thank you also for all the links. It's excellent. Thank you also for taking the time to highlight what is the power behind the VGGT, and notably on one element, which is to create a common language, which is absolutely crucial now to negotiate and advance on policy. But without further ado, I will give the floor to the second speaker. So the second speaker of today is Sasha Alexander, who has been also working. With whom I have the pleasure to work on the UNCCD-FAO joint initiative to integrate tenure into land degradation neutrality. So Sasha is, apologies, it doesn't show. Sasha is a policy advisor for, or policy officer, sorry Sasha, it doesn't show your bio. So
okay.
in
I'll
the UNCCD secretariat, and you will do it yourself, and apologies for that again.
That's okay. That's okay. It got lost in the translation.
Yes, I did.
If we could have the slides. Thank you to Nathalie. That was an excellent presentation. Makes my life a lot easier. She set up all the fundamental principles, all the fundamental mandates. As you know, the UN operates on mandates, and the UNCCD is a multilateral environmental convention, and that the COP decisions make a big difference in terms of the way that the Secretariat functions, in terms of the trajectory of the work programs, and ultimately, we hope, impact at the national level. So if we could start with the slides, I will just jump into what we've been doing to integrate the VGGT into LDN. One of the, in addition to all the knowledge products and awareness raising that we do, women's land rights, we have various campaigns that we join. These are out there and available on our website. I want to talk about the national consultations, which the parties to our convention have requested. This was a request to support national efforts to identify the leverage points for integrating the voluntary guidelines or other pathways to more secure tenure that would support the land degradation neutrality, or if you would prefer, land restoration, sustainable land management efforts that many countries are now undertaken. So that was the fundamental rationale behind that. We were fortunate enough to have enough financing to do an initial phase of 5 country national consultations in 5 countries. Altogether, there were about 25 applications, and we are currently exploring how we can continue rolling out these national consultations. The next slide. The consultations were all designed in, these are interesting slides, guys. The consultations were all designed in different ways based on the application from the country, what the priorities were, and were there any thematic focus for the consultation and for the participants. All the consultations were multi-stakeholder, both so with government, private sector, and civil society, NGOs participating. Next slide, please. So going in, this is just overview of the countries that applied. The countries that are in red are the countries where we completed the consultations. So Kazakhstan, Sri Lanka, Kenya, Senegal, and Mexico. Next slide, please. So Kazakhstan was our first national consultation, and thanks to the incredible support from FAO, both in Rome and at the national level, we were able to pull off these 5 consultations. We had dedicated teams, different teams for each of the 5 consultations, and they were conducted in person. So this was a critical element, I think, to the success of the consultation. So for Kazakhstan, the main recommendations that came out of the consultation were the establishment of a cross-sectoral mechanism, a mechanism for collaboration across sectors. So in Central Asia, the former Soviet republics, sectors tend to be a little bit more top-down, state-controlled, but of course we know that there are liberalization policies going on now. But just to have a little bit of a different context than when we talk about sectors, perhaps in a more capitalist, democratic, inclusive society. But so these were focused on, these mechanisms were looking at data issues, also looking at common lands, common pasture lands, common grazing lands, and what could be done. The outcome was that actually the consultation took their recommendations and went to the committee responsible for drafting the National Action Plan to combat desertification, as well as the land degradation national plans on target setting. So it was a very practical consultation that had very immediate results at the national level. Next slide. Sri Lanka, next slide, please. So I was fortunate enough to participate as part of the team in Sri Lanka. This was a very interesting exercise because there are over 30 government agencies, all with some responsibility or policy mandate on land administration, land governance. So we got most of them in the room. I would say 20, maybe 22. So that was an incredible feat with Sri Lanka. Civil society would participate. Again, the idea of a coordination mechanism was front and foremost in terms of the recommendations. They identified where in the hierarchy of government agencies we need to target. So the divisional secretaries in this particular, governance framework, similar to India and some of the other Commonwealth countries, the divisional secretaries were identified as the entry point, both to go above and to go to the local level and deal with the farmers and the producer cooperatives and civil society. So that was very interesting. Empowering them with data, assessments, and land use planning, particularly at the village level. And Sri Lanka has many different programs that are looking at land use at various scales, and there were a lot of opportunities there for integrating tenure security or advancing tenure security in those programs. Next slide, please. Kenya. Yeah, so this included very strong participation from civil society, from community representatives, and from the international NGO community. As you know, Kenya is very well connected globally and has a lot of support from its neighbors and from the global community. So there was a rich exchange of voices and experiences, concerns, as well as solutions. So many of the insights were then, because Kenya is participating in a second phase of the LDN target setting, which is land use planning, integrated land use planning. Many of the recommendations from the Kenya consultation went into the LDN second phase, and so that was a good thing. There was also the potential to start informing what Kenya calls the national land policy, and creating a roadmap for their various initiatives, including some of the afforestation, reforestation initiatives. Next slide, please. Senegal has a long history, been an initial convener of multi-stakeholder platforms in the VGGT, and we felt there was a nice opportunity to build upon some sub-regional, sub-national consultations that were taking place in Senegal to hold a national dialogue. And so this, again, was to strengthen the organizational capacities of these various actors, and to see how we can provide training on the various tools and instruments that are available and that have been inspired by the VGGT. They also looked at the legal frameworks and how to reflect modern sort of legal frameworks, land ownership frameworks, private ownership, with the more customary traditional indigenous governance arrangements. So looking at various hybrid systems, looking at how systems can become interoperable and still maintain the integrity at the national level. So that was a very interesting dialogue there in Senegal. And lastly, next slide, please. In Mexico, the emphasis was on institutional collaboration with a emphasis on women's land rights, women's participation in these processes. So as you may know, Mexico has a long-standing tradition of let's say, recognizing women's role in society, whether or not the policies align directly with that recognition. But it is there. Women have a very strong voice in various sectors and various aspects of civil life. And we were looking at the organizers, the various government agencies. We worked with, again, another international NGO for Mexico. We really focused on how we translate these legitimate land rights to women, to indigenous women in particular, but other marginalized and vulnerable communities as well. So this dialogue focused on these challenges of rural indigenous women and looking at how various changes within the public, the ejido. There's three major land governance systems in Mexico, but looking at each one individually to see how we can empower women so that they have more of a voice, and thus we make more progress towards sustainable land management. The recommendations were put into a policy brief, which is available on the UNCCD and the FAO website. So I would encourage you, if you're interested. WRI made a very nice presentation there and put together the policy brief, looking at some of the ways of connecting the agencies, local organizations, and international actors for ensuring better land rights for indigenous and rural women. So with that, I feel like that I've given you a little bit of a snapshot of what we did following on the decisions that the UNCCD has adopted. We have 3 decisions now, COP 15, 16, 14, 15, 16, and now we go to Mongolia for COP 17 in August of next year. Thank you very much. Back to you, Morani.
Thank you, Sasha. And as I have been able to retrieve my notes, I will introduce you just after. So Sasha is a policy officer of the UNCCD Secretariat, the United Convention to Combat Desertification, where he focuses his role on sustainable land management and ecosystem restoration, helping countries and communities to achieve sustainable development goals, and specifically the SDG target 15.3.1 to achieve land degradation neutrality. Coordinates the publication of the Global Land Outlook and other knowledge projects, and he facilitates the UNCCD role in numerous global partnerships to promote secure land tenure, gender responsiveness, youth engagement, and disaster risk reduction. Thank you very much, Sasha, for your presentation that have shown also a concrete implementation from the technical guide to coming to its reality. And what we see through these 5 examples is that the reality of countries vary a lot, and the need, the way that the VGGT can be absorbed that makes sense to really achieve land degradation neutrality will vary country per country. So thank you very much for this example. I would like to remind to all the participants that you can place your question in the Q&A, and for the panelists also to monitor what is going in the Q&A, either to respond, the QA, either to respond directly, or we will pick them up during the exchange with everyone. Now, I would like to turn to Dr. Juskar Nyungep. He is a researcher and practitioner in natural resource management, land restoration, and sustainable land management. He will be our 3rd presenter. He served as administrative coordinator and GIS data manager at Agemelebu Self-Help, also called AGESH, I think. a civil society organization in Cameroon, where he has worked since 2014. His work focuses on promoting community-led advocacy and data-driven approaches to land degradation neutrality and enhance ecosystem resilience in alignment with the goal of UNCCD. Dr. Nyunjep will present insights for the integration of the VGGT into national and local initiative of sustainable land management and land restoration. And you have the floor for 10 minutes.
Okay, thank you, for giving me the floor. I also thank Sacha to introduce the implementation, what they have done so far. I think it's in the line of what the VGT, which is a great document for sustainable land governance, has to bring to countries, how it can help also to structure the decision-making document on land governance. So I will start with the what is to recall what is voluntary guideline for governance of tenure. I think first slide, please. So we'll start. I think if I recall the voluntary guideline on tenure, it helped to promote and secure tenure rights, equitable access to land, fishery, and forests, which respect all forms of tenure for public and private, communal, and indigenous customary land. So why the VGGT matter? Because it is a way of the state to provide or improve an internationally accepted framework that promotes the recognition of tenure rights and formal governance of uh, others to reduce or to contribute to reduce hunger and poverty and promote sustainable use of the environment. Because in the Congo Basin, local communities are facing more hunger and poverty, while they have huge amount of forest cover. We are facing drought and agricultural production reduction. So the VGG is there to guide how countries implement to reduce hunger and also sustain communities' livelihood, how to enhance community livelihood. So consultations around the country in the Congo Basin, especially in Cameroon also, have gone through different implementation of projects through the IUCNs, the JEF project, and GIZ. So the implementation of VGTG in Congo Basin mostly based on identification of different strategy through projects, and also those projects implemented by CSO and government help also to reinforce institutional document on land on sustainable land governance in the country. Next slide, please. So Cameroon particularly face, as country in the Congo Basin, face weak on a non-inclusive of policies that limits women and indigenous communities access to land. So there are land allocation that are conflicting and conflicting with the land tenure, and which reduce the food securities. Because if I take example, forest concessions that are located through in the communities indigenous land, where they have their livelihood activities without consultation, without FPIC, and within the implementation of that, it doesn't contribute to weaken the strategy, the implementation strategy that communities have been put in place to reduce in order to reduce hunger and poverty. So this also illegal forest exploitation are drivers of 60%, more than 60% of forest degradation, using the Global Forest Watch analysis which we have been using since about 3 years to monitor deforestation in the forest concessions and also in the non-forest allocation land, to understand what are the causes and the drivers of land degradation. We understand that illegal forest exploitation also are contributing. And also the RPSCs, which must rely on the natural-based solution and local practice to combat land degradations, sustain their livelihood, are more are not more are facing soil degradation. They are facing soil degradation, drought, which are due to intensive forest exploitation and non-sustainable agriculture, which are pushing them to not be sustainable on their livelihood. So next slide, please. So in Cameroon, AGESH as an organization with the others organization as a network contribute a lot to as in inclusive land management tools to advance sustainable land management. So such guides has been made as in Cameroon in the Cameroon and Congo within a program sustainable land governance, which has enabled to bring up some tools for monitoring land deforestation, and also to map communities livelihood and do through participatory mapping. That next slide, please. Through participatory mapping, which enable community to understand how the land could be managed. So it help also to come out with a guide to address advocacy to the government on how communities management of land could help to increase the sustainable management of the natural resources than for government to do allocation of land without taking into account the communities' livelihood activities within the area. So those activity has been through several steps, which help to build the capacity of the community, do the sensitize of what is about land, what is all about uh, risk and awareness, do mapping, doing the data collection, community participate in the data collection, follow up through advocacy, land use planning, where the maps, participating mapping and land use plan develop, help to build advocacy data. And now after that it's endorsed by approved and signed by these community leaders, which has been used to present at the government level, decision maker level, to understand how impact the activities or non-inclusive allocation of land are impacting communities' livelihood. Next slide, please. So also mapping help also to understand how cultural activities of the communities are being degrading or including. Also, the result on the database built on the degradation using global forest watch tool, using remote sensing and community data collected, help to elaborate a restoration plan that inclusive with the communities, where we have been able to restore degraded land in about 4 landscape in Cameroon, using communities nursery established and monitored by communities. So we also use the same system to see how it can help in conservation, because conservation of protected areas, since we are contributing as a partner with the government in Cameroon for forest conservation, where we are now conducting a special platform on how to restore some old forests not managed to conserve forests, but establish a communities leaders which are main people to participate in the conservation through participatory mapping, all the activities are assessed and also improved to see how they can be integrated in the conservation. So next slide, please. And also the agricultural activities are improved through techniques used, identifies using through those techniques. Improvement have been identified during data collection, where an assessment of their preoccupation on to improve the agricultural production was made. So the challenges are like community effort to apply VGGT and land degradation neutrality are very limited in the law. That's why more data collected by communities and CSO in Cameroon help to inform decision makers and institutional documents to achieve that. So access to VGGT tools and local level remain low. So most of the tools we have been building with the government to make achieve or enhance the communication on land degradation are not very institutional. They are very low, and it's partial area that are benefiting. So we support the support of our understanding of community and indigenous role in biodiversity and food security are so low that because community don't have access on how they really do need to improve their livelihoods. And we are coming out with agroecology methods. So to help communities, sensitize communities on how livelihood activities can be improved using agroecological methods. So the ongoing land and forestry law in Cameroon has is benefiting for this guideline through implementation of several activities that were being put in place. While the 2014-24 forest law that has been validated since July 2024 have been a result of several discussion and implementation experience of what has been put in place in the communities and revert to the decision makers. So the VGTG is a really good, great document that each country implements according to its context, and it has to also increase the quality, the life quality, the lifestyles, also to better the environment of the countries that the people are implementing. So next slide, please. Okay, so that's where we end my thoughts, because this show that this is a great document. Country lack a much effort to finance effort to really implement according to the problem they are facing in their country. So thank you very much.
Dear Oscar, thank you very, very much for your presentation. It's indeed super important to see how the VGGT can be brought at local level, no? They are, and Natalie highlighted well, they are an important negotiated tool. Somehow, they become, with this negotiation, they become a tool of everyone. But we know that just the fact that they've been published or adopted doesn't mean that they are known. And this is a process. This is a process, for instance, to see that they can have an uptake in the realm of the Convention on Desertification, which already has helped to expand, but also helped to really have this notion that land is a place of right and is also a natural resources, and both need to be considered to actually advance on caring for the resource. But it's also through your exam show, and that was the example of Sasha, no, of the national consideration then on how it can be brought. And then again, going at more local level, but it's much needed. It's how can this VGGT be brought concretely into operational action, can help to have a same language, can help to raise awareness to local government or national government, and help also to shape when there is a policy reform process. So thank you very much. I see that the chat of question and answer has been fairly active. So I would like now to invite the three panelists to put back their video on so that we can see you. And I would like to progressively raise some questions for you to address. So I believe the first one on the PowerPoint presentation, if they can be available, that I would ask the organizer to respond directly. One from John Paul Bay. There was one addressed to Sasha. How do you integrate human rights into the VGGT principle to localize the concept in order to address land conflict? So I understand them on how the VGGT consider the human right, particularly to address land conflict.
Yeah, I'll let you, Aurélie, address that, but human rights is part of the VGGT. It is the basis. Recognizing legitimate land rights is a human right. That's the way we see it, and that's the way we advocate. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, and maybe just an element, additional element of response. There have been a very interesting work also partnering between FAO, but also TMG and a third organization. And I'm sorry, I'm losing the name at the moment, but I was actually looking at making a navigator to understand what are the legal basis of the VGGT. And we see that the basis of the VGGT are the human rights, the right to food, the progressive right to food. So there are various pieces of legislation, as Natalie was actually highlighting it, including the ILO 169, that are compulsory type of legislation that back up the VGGT, which are a soft law. And I will search for the navigator later than if I have 1 minute to try to share it with you. Alors, here to all the participants, we have got started project implementation that aims to enhance land tenure security for local community which restore degraded land. What kind of advice linked to the national consultation or the VGGT to be more efficient? Maybe, Juskar, from your own experience, this is something you can say. How can, in a local land restoration project, the use of the VGGT can be made more efficient?
Yes, I think if I take the example of what we have been doing, it started with identification of the priorities and also mapping of identification of the problem. We identify the problem with the communities and they are sensitized and we come out with the solution together. So the restoration project, for it to be sustainable in the context of VGTG, need to be applied, need to be adapt, accepted by communities. That's why I use the example that we identify the priority, what are the degraded zone, what are the impact of the degraded zone in the community livelihood. When they are mapped, we come together with the community nursery with the identified plans to restore both degraded land and community livelihood, and we implement the nursery where which communities are trained to build the nursery and take over the nursery, and after later on we share the nursery plan where they use it now to really restore a degraded area and their livelihood. The livelihood and restored area because the plants always forest trees and agroforestry within the area that have been identified. So such help also to help the government how to understand what is going on in the landscape, and the community are contributing both in their livelihood and in the restored environment. I think if I have answered the questions.
Thank you very much, Oscar.
Mhm.
Alors, I was warned by the organizer that actually we are out of time. It was planned for a 1-hour webinar, and here we are on the hour. So there are still questions that are unanswered. Some are for some of the panelists. So please have a look, panelists. And the organizer will organize to respond by writing. So now I would like to thank you all. I would like to invite you to stay. So few things. The recording of today's session and the slide will be available. The panelists will share with us our presentation and they will be shared with you. There is also a feedback form that you are invited to fill at the end. So please stay in line a bit more and also join the next session of the webinar. So the next session will be on Thursday 13, so next week on Thursday, and it will be on monitoring community-based sustainable land management and restoration. I would like to thank again all the panelists. I see that Natalie has a hand, so please, Natalie.
Sorry, I'm a bit impolite, but what I really would like to encourage everyone here at this webinar to use the super progressive COP decision of the UNCCD on land tenure, to use that COP decision and the tenure guidelines to engage with with national policymakers, with policymakers at also the subnational levels, because it's a real strong instrument for a good conversation. That's what I only wanted to say. Thank you.
No, and it was important. So thank you for taking the floor to say it. Indeed, again, the VGGT are a common language that can be used with government and advance also on policy. With this, hoping to see you another time. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to moderate the event. I have liked a lot what I learned and looked today, and I wish you all a very nice day. Bye bye. Bonne journée à tous. Que tengan buen día.
Bye bye.